When it comes to the cosmic in comics, there is no doubt that Jack Kirby is the man. His creation of the Kree, the Skrulls, his fourth world and Darkseid, the man brought a true sense of wonder to the four-color world he helped to pioneer. But if there is a guy who became a successor to him, that was this man, Jim Starlin. During the 70s, Jim had a talent for taking pre-established characters like Captain Marvel and Adam Warlock and tweaking them, taking them on more cosmic adventures, and in general just making them more cool. Jim was also not afraid to kill characters off when the story demanded it. To this day, the original Captain Marvel is still deceased. And while Jack Kirby created the amazing Darkseid, in some quarters that character pales in comparison to Jim's Thanos. Okay, the first draft wasn't exactly the coolest, but it didn't take long for him to achieve a visual awesomeness seldom seen in comics, one that has endured and thrived over the decades to the point where he has become one of cinema's most compelling bad guys. But interestingly enough, between the time of Thanos' first epic battles and his return years later in the pages of Silver Surfer and the Infinity Gauntlet, Jim Starlin worked on another cosmic epic, the Metamorphosis Odyssey. Epic Illustrated was a magazine Marvel published from 1980 through 1986. It was a place where author-owned properties could be published and were not bound by the restrictions of the Comics Code Authority, which meant things could be both more violent and have some sexual content. It was here that Jim Starlin first began the Metamorphosis Odyssey. Here the story was the Milky Way galaxy was embroiled in a war between two ancient alien races, the nihilistic Zygoteans and the noble Osirans, which ultimately involved the hero Vanth Dreadstar. Now I'm not going to talk about the early chapters of the Metamorphosis Odyssey for two reasons. The principal one being I don't own all the segments to it, so I really can't do it justice. And two, Jim Starlin helpfully exposits in the series Dreadstar what went down not only in Epic Illustrated, but also in the Dreadstar graphic novel. That I do own. The Dreadstar series was part of Marvel's Epic line, begun in '82, and was a natural progression from the magazine that shared its name. Dreadstar was the first comic published under the imprint, with Starlin doing both the art and the writing. We open on an alien Catman named Odie, providing some much-needed exposition, considering the likelihood of readers never reading a single installment of the Metamorphosis Odyssey in Epic Illustrated. Odie explains that he is a fugitive and an outlaw in a galaxy embroiled in a 200-year-old war. The two factions are an ancient monarchy and the Church of the Instrumentality, and it touches back on Jim Starlin's fascination with religion and the abuse of power, as when he wrote Warlock, that hero's principal villain was his evil alter ego, which ruled a galaxy through a religion. I think maybe Jim had some issues with church growing up. Odie further explains that on his homeworld of Kaldor, a mysterious human male came stumbling out of the wilderness. Critically wounded, he was taken to Delilah, the only other human on the planet, where she was certain he would not last the night. To everyone's surprise, the stranger lived and recovered in an amazingly short time. He explained his name was Vanth Dreadstar, the last survivor of the Milky Way galaxy that had been destroyed in an epic conflict. Vanth forswore war and turned his life to farming, and to no one's surprise fell in love with and married Delilah. Odie grows to manhood, and another visitor arrives. This time is Syzygy Darklock, a horrific-looking being who has sustained gross injuries in his quest for power and knowledge. A former priest of the Instrumentality, he has come to enlist Vanth's aid in stopping the war. But Vanth will have none of it. He's a farmer now, and not half bad at it, and he's done with killing. But it would be a very boring comic if it was just about Vanth Dreadstar raising crops. The monarchy's ships come and lay waste to Kaldor, wiping out Odie's people and leaving him the lone survivor. He finds Vanth and Syzygy outside of Dreadstar and Delilah's home, and fortunately things are far less graphic here than what is found in the graphic novel. Vanth is enraged and swears there's going to be a lot of blood to spill when Odie asks to come along and help.
I want to come with you to Alder. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
There's no denying there are some familiar tropes here, with a farm boy's world being burned to ashes and follows a wise mystic into space. We also get the Vanth-Syzygy dynamic, which resembles the Arthur-Merlin relationship. But I don't find this a bad thing. When asked about the similarities between Harry Potter and his creation Tim Hunter, writer Neil Gaiman, class act that he is, simply pointed out that both he and J.K. Rowling were calling upon earlier works of fiction for inspiration. These plot devices, these character archetypes keep popping up because they work. We as readers like them. But back to the comic. While Odie learned the ways of while Odie was being trained as a multi-talented badass, Vanth was off dealing death to the man responsible for destroying Kaldor, King Nelor. He then visited the late king's nephew and told him, "Congratulations, you're king now. Don't screw it up. I've got a plan to stop the war and you're going to play ball, or I come back and try again with your successor." But war is never static, and the instrumentality seems to have developed some sort of wonder weapon. Perhaps it's a moon-sized space station with a death ray? Whatever it is, it's laying waste to the monarchy's defenses, and in a matter of weeks, everyone in the galaxy will be forced to convert to space Catholicism. Unless, of course, our heroes can do something about it. Okay, what I'm seeing right here is that this was a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. We've got a pretty well-rounded group. We've got Vanth the Ranger, Darklock the Wizard Priest multiclass, Willow, who is presumably a druid, judging by her pet monkey, and Odie the Thief. Jim Starlin glances over who Willow is right now because even he realized by this point he should...
Get on with it! Yes, get on with it!
Yeah. The gang is headed to a space station that, according to Darklock, holds about a tenth of the Church of the Instrumentality's wealth. Ah, so it's to be a heist caper, eh? That's a great way to start out an epic where we get an idea of everyone's capabilities. I can't wait to see what Odie... Oh. Odie the Thief stays behind. So I guess he's really the team's torchbearer then. On board, the gang is stopped by a robot sentry, and we discover that Willow is both blind and sees through her pet monkey's eyes, and that she is a cybernetic telepath able to control computers. Ooh, it's the most dreaded of classes that every dungeon master fears, the psionicist. Willow puts the robot to sleep, and Syzygy proves his worth by bypassing the mystic wards that protect the treasure. The gang steps into the vault, and they're overwhelmed by the vast amount of swag on hand. Man, that was really easy. I sure hope this comic does more than just... Oh! And now the first true obstacle falls literally into place, what Willow calls a giant robot. And of course, the magic user's low hit points make him vulnerable, and Darklock's immediately knocked out. It turns out it's not a robot. It's actually a cyborg, a human mind encased in that shell that's shielded from Willow's powers. So now it's up to Vanth, the team muscle, to do his thing. He summons his magical blade, and I'm sure at this point Jim was trying to figure out how to explain how the science sorcerer Akhenaten had forged it and left it on the fields of the planet Bifrax, where Vanth had found it, bonded with it, used it to kill the snow bears that had killed his... Right. Vanth dispatches the cyborg pretty handily, and Willow reports Syz is alive, but he's KO'd. She expresses horror at the fact that anyone would do that to a person, and she's talking about the cyborg, not Syz. And I gotta say, this is an effective way of showing just how terrible both sides are. The monarchy wipes out a colony of peaceful farmers. The Church of the Instrumentality sticks some poor bastard's brain in a robot body for the sole purpose of guarding their loot. You just don't tell people how bad the bad guys are. You show it. You provide graphic examples of their inhumanity. Syz gets moved back to the ship, and Odie oversees the robots loading the booty, but he knows that things are going too easily. And that's when...
Jesus Christ!
Yes, the instrumentality has shown up literally from out of nowhere, and now the heroes realize that's the secret of their new wonder weapon. Instant pinpoint teleportation. Odie reports Darklock is still out, so Vanth goes with Plan B. He has Odie tell him exactly where the ship is, and make sure Willow has her emergency jump mask before he enacts Operation Pull Their Asses Out of the Fire. Hopefully it doesn't involve help on Odie's part, because the instrumentality sends over a couple of robots to cat sit. What follows is an orgy of destruction as Vanth proceeds to cut a vicious swath through instrumentality soldiers in a bid to get him and Willow to a particular sub-level. Here we see just how good Jim Starlin understands the medium. A comic book can be compared to a motion picture storyboard, that you could take these pages and plot out an action scene in any blockbuster. Starlin delivers stunning visuals you don't often see these days, in my opinion. But as badass as Dreadstar is, his luck finally runs out. It's then time for Willow to step up, and she proves to be no slouch either, as the instrumentality troops try to swarm her. Now, if you're wondering why they just don't kill her, I think it's the same reason why they didn't just blow up the good guy's ship. They want prisoners. They want to know who these people are and how they got so far. And with Vanth so obviously being dead, quote-unquote, it means they have to take Willow alive. But Willow shows she does more than read and control minds, as she proves she's pretty badass. She is able to protect herself and Vanth both until Dreadstar gets a second wind. The pair get to their destination and Vanth blows a hole to the outside, where he then shows that his blade can be dialed up to 11 as he cripples the battleship. Back on board, Vanth and Willow discover Sis woke up and dealt with the robots, so they are home free. And why does Odie look so smug? He hardly did anything and he gets full experience. The good guys get away with the swag, and now have the capability to enact their master plan. Elsewhere, the Lord High Papal gets the report, and instead of doing something melodramatic like killing the messenger, he instead calls for help. Right away, this makes for an interesting wrinkle, as apparently there really are 12 gods, and the Lord High Papal is their lackey. This means beating the bad guys is more than just taking down the head of a church. The beings behind the church itself have to somehow be neutralized. The Papal explains to the gods that Dreadstar and company are far more powerful than him, and he needs to level up. The gods give him the boost of power he desires, and the issue ends with the Lord High Papal promising Dreadstar and company are as good as dead. Dreadstar Issue 1, expository issues aside, is a fantastic first installment for an ongoing series. We get a nice little caper gone wrong story that in modern comics probably would have been dragged out to 6 issues. But Jim instead delivers an action-packed page-turner. Starlin's art is legendary, and I really feel this is him at the top of his game here. I will be coming back to Dreadstar time and again, so if you're interested in what happens next, stay tuned. Or, you could go to your local comic book store and ask them to order it for you. Dreadstar The Beginning collects the Metamorphosis Odyssey, the graphic novel, and The Price, which I'll be touching on later. Then there's Dreadstar Omnibuses Volumes 1 and 2. So if you aren't buying many comics these days, this is a great way to support your shop. If you enjoyed the video, please don't hesitate to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe. Peace out.